If you want a Social Security check in the neighborhood of $3,500 a month, the first thing to understand is that a benefit like that is not built in the year you retire. It is built over time. And then it is either strengthened or weakened by one of the most important decisions you will ever make when you claim. That is the part most people miss. Many folks think Social Security is mostly automatic. You work, you retire, and then you claim. And whatever number shows up is whatever number shows up. But that is not really how it works. If you want a stronger benefit, there are a few specific levers that matter a lot more than most people realize. And today I want to walk you through them in plain English, not theory. Just the mechanics behind what makes a Social Security benefit bigger or smaller. I'm Lou Reyes, and welcome back to Over 50 TV, where we help you earn more so you can retire smarter. If your goal is to understand how to get a Social Security benefit of around $3,500 a month, or at least learn how to maximize what you earned, this video is for you. First, let's start with an important point. A $3,500 monthly Social Security benefit is a strong benefit. It is not average. It is also not the maximum. It sits in that upper range where your work history was solid, your earnings were strong, and your claiming decision did not undercut the result. That matters because some people hear $3,500 a month and think, well, that sounds impossible. It is not impossible, but it does not happen by accident either. If you want a benefit like that, three big things matter. First, your earnings history. Second, how Social Security's formula treats those earnings. And third, when you claim. And I want to start with that third one because it is the easiest one to understand and the one that can change your monthly check the fastest. Claiming age can change everything. Let's use the maximum 2026 benefit just to show the power of timing. If someone qualifies for the maximum benefit and claims at full retirement age of 67, they are looking at roughly $4,152 a month. If that same person claims early at 62, the number drops to about $2,969. And if that same person waits until age 70, the benefit rises to about $5,181. Think about what that means. Same person, same work history, same system. But depending on the age they claim, the monthly amount can swing by roughly $2,200. That is not a rounding error. That is a retirement lifestyle difference. That is why claiming age matters so much. If you claim at 62, you are generally locking in about a 30% reduction compared with your full retirement age amount. If you delay beyond full retirement age, you earn delayed retirement credits, about 8% per year, until age 70. So when people ask me, how do I build a bigger Social Security check? Part of the answer is simple. Do not give away part of it unnecessarily by claiming too early. That does not mean everyone should wait until 70. Some people absolutely should not wait. Health issues matter, cash flow needs matter, work status matters, family situation matters. Now, if you are asking how people get up into that $3,500 monthly range, claiming age is one of the biggest reasons. Now let's talk about the part people usually misunderstand. A lot of people assume Social Security works like a savings account. I paid in more, so I will get proportionally more out. That sounds logical. But Social Security does not work in a straight line. It uses a formula, and that formula is designed to be progressive. Here is the basic idea. Social Security looks at your highest 35 years of earnings. Then it indexes those earnings and turns them into what is called your average indexed monthly earnings, or AIME. Then it runs that number through a formula using what are called bend points. For someone turning 62 in 2026, the bend points are $1,286 and $7,749. And here is what that means in practice. Social Security gives you 90% credit on the first part of your AIME. Then 32% on the next section, then 15% on the amount above the second bend point. So the first part of your income gets treated very generously. The next part gets treated less generously. And the higher your income goes, the less additional benefit you get from each new dollar. That is why lower and middle income workers get a higher replacement rate from Social Security than higher income workers do. And that is also why two people with very different earnings histories can end up with monthly checks that are closer than you might expect. There is another important detail here. Those bend points are based on the year you turn 62, not the year you claim. That means the formula side and the timing side are two separate things. Your earnings record and bend point formula determine the base benefit. Then your claiming age determines whether that base amount gets reduced or increased. That is a very important distinction because a lot of people assume that if they wait longer, the whole formula changes. But it does not. The formula is tied to the year you hit 62. The claiming decision comes afterward. So if you want to understand how to get to $3,500 a month, you need to think in two layers. How strong is my base benefit? And how much am I helping or hurting it when I claim? Now let's get practical. What kind of earnings history tends to put someone in the ballpark of a strong Social Security benefit? Here is the rough picture at full retirement age. At $50,000 in annual income, the benefit comes out to a little over $2,000 a month. At $75,000, around $2,700. At $100,000, about $3,300. At $125,000, roughly $3,600. And at $150,000, just under $4,000 a month. Now, before anybody jumps on that, let me make something clear. These are simplified illustrations. They are not exact Social Security quotes, because Social Security does not simply take your current annual salary, divide it by 12, and call it a day. It uses indexed earnings from your highest 35 years. So these examples are useful for understanding the direction of the system, not for predicting your exact benefit. But even as simplified illustrations, they tell us something important. They tell us that by the time you are in that $100,000 to $125,000 range of long-term annual earnings, you are moving into the territory where a $3,500 monthly benefit becomes realistic, especially if you do not claim too early. And they also show something else. The system gives you less and less extra benefit as your earnings rise. The jump from $50,000 to $75,000 produces a pretty meaningful gain. But the jump from $125,000 to $150,000 produces a much smaller gain. Because once you're above that second bend point, you're only getting 15% credit on the additional earnings. That is the formula doing exactly what it was designed to do. So what does all of this mean in real life? It means there are really two broad paths to a stronger Social Security benefit. Path number one, you improve your work record. That can mean working longer. That can mean replacing lower earning years with higher earning years. That can mean continuing to earn good money later in your career if it makes sense for your life. Remember, Social Security is built from your highest 35 years. So if you have weak years in that record and you can replace them with stronger years, that can help. Path number two, you protect the benefit you have built by being careful when you claim. And for some people, that second lever is the difference between an okay check and a much stronger one. Let's use the $150,000 simplified example. At 62, that example lands just under $2,800 a month. At 70, it is about $4,900. That is a monthly difference of more than $2,100. That is huge. That is exactly why so many people think of Social Security as longevity insurance. The longer you live, the more valuable that larger monthly check can become. Now compare that to the $50,000 earner in the example. At 62, around $1,400. At 70, just under $2,600. The absolute dollar difference is smaller. And for that person, Social Security may be paying for core living expenses like housing, food, insurance, and utilities. So the question for that household may be less about, how do I maximize every dollar? And more about, when do I need the income? That is why there is no single perfect claiming age for everybody. And that leads to one of the most overlooked truths in retirement planning. Social Security matters differently depending on your income level. For lower earners, it often carries a huge share of the retirement load. For higher earners, it usually plays more of a supporting role. At lower income levels, Social Security may replace a very meaningful percentage of what you used to earn. At higher income levels, the replacement rate drops and more of the retirement burden shifts to savings and investments. That does not mean Social Security stops mattering for higher earners. It still provides guaranteed inflation-adjusted monthly income. and that is incredibly valuable. But it means a higher earner's retirement outcome depends more heavily on the rest of the plan. Now, let's talk about households because this part matters a lot. Too many people look at Social Security as if it exists in a vacuum. My benefit, my claiming age, my check. But for married couples, the more useful way to think about Social Security is often at the household level. If both spouses were strong earners, the combined household benefit can be very substantial. It is not unrealistic to think in terms of a combined $7,000 to $8,000 monthly Social Security income for high earning dual income households. And that can change how aggressively or conservatively you need to draw from investments. So when people ask, how do I get a stronger Social Security benefit? Part of the answer may be this. Stop thinking only as an individual. Start thinking like a household. So let me pull all of this together. If you want a Social Security check in the neighborhood of $3,500 a month, here is what usually has to be true. You need a solid earnings record. You need enough strong years in your top 35 to build a healthy base benefit. You need to understand that the formula is progressive, so extra earnings help, but not in a straight line. And you need to be very careful about when you claim because claiming early can permanently shrink a benefit that might otherwise have landed near your target. That is the core of it. Not magic, not gimmicks, just earnings history, formula mechanics, and claiming strategy. And if you get those right, you give yourself a much better chance of turning Social Security into a meaningful piece of your retirement income, not just a check that feels small. Now, I would love to hear from you. Are you aiming to claim early or wait to full retirement age? Or are you trying to hold off until 70? Let me know in the comments. And if you want your Social Security questions answered in seconds, check out Social Security Buddy. That's the app I created to give you guidance on claiming benefits. And if you have not subscribed yet, subscribe to Over 50 TV where we help you earn more so you can retire smarter. And if you are interested in building income outside of Social Security, check out Side Hustle Rules. That's my other YouTube channel where I show you how to start a business smart and scale it fast. I'm Lou Reyes. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.